Welcome into the Toyota Lounge for the DNVR Avalanche podcast, powered by your Front Range Toyota dealerships. It's a Monday, and I don't think it's fair to say that free agency is over, but the bulk of the work has been done, yeah?
Yes. And it was funny how quickly, when it opened, how quickly it seemed like work got done.
Yeah. Felt like already on July 2nd there wasn't a lot left, and now we're on July 8th, and it's pretty slim pickings, to say the least, at this point. Not that I'm sure things will continue to trickle in here and there. I'm sure the Avs will continue doing work through September, as they always do. So there is still more to come, but with the majority of it done, we figured, you know what? Let's figure out some winners, some losers, whose off seasons we liked, whose we didn't like, etc. But I want to start with the Avs before we dive fully into this offseason and some of the teams that did a good job.
Richie, they signed him.
Hey, let's go. Thank you for doing that at the start of our show. There you go. Indeed, breaking news. Cal Ritchie officially signs his ELC with the Colorado Avalanche. Make sure you're getting over to Indeed.com and go to Indeed.com/DNVR to get a $75 credit to get your job hiring out there. So I guess let's just do this real quick. I don't think this is any big surprise. Cal Ritchie officially signed. We talked about it the other day. Did his odds of being the Avs 4C this season just go up a little bit more?
They do, and I think they needed to make a little bit of a commitment to the player to reward the commitment that he has made to get NHL ready. It's still, an article on Cal Ritchie just came out today, but it's still not historically how the Avs have operated just the position of centerman generally.
Yeah.
Fourth line centerman's a little bit different, but I look at how Alex Newhook was utilized in his rookie season and even his sophomore season, and he was kept on a pretty short leash and inevitably spent time in the American Hockey League. Ritchie doesn't have that luxury this upcoming year, so this is a bit unprecedented, on kind of uncharted waters here. I think that it's still very possible for him, and I'm excited to see him seize this opportunity that I'll get with that runway of 9 games at the start of the season.
Yeah, it should be interesting, maybe more so next year than this year. Like, even if he goes and earns the job this year, and we'd all be super excited and great to see Cal Ritchie. But from the Avs standpoint, having that ELC for 3 years worth of time is a significant impact on their bottom line when it comes to their cap hit. And obviously this offseason, there's multiple things that are, let's call them mysterious, that are going on with the Avs cap hit. So it's hard to say how much impact that will have, but certainly by next summer, the Avs will have a much more significant beat on both Nichushkin and Landeskog's situations. So that ELC for at least 2 or 3 years, depending on if they want it to slide this year or not, will give them that little bit of extra cap space going forward. Did it work? Hey, look at that. Hey! Look at this guy.
Yeah.
I forgot that we were going to do this, but we can jump into it since it's semi-pertinent to the conversation that we were just having. I really don't have a lot to say on this. I really don't take much of this interview seriously. But Val Nichushkin did do an interview talking about his situation. Now, this interview was recorded before what happened in the most recent playoffs, but he talked about some of the situation with his Seattle removal from the team. And I mean, I don't know. What do you guys make of Val's comments talking about how he was going to be missing the rest of that Seattle series anyway and everything else going on with him?
It doesn't change very much about how I feel about the situation, but it does add a little bit of information. I will say I didn't know about the shoulder injury, so I guess it adds a little bit of color, but it still doesn't ultimately change how I feel about how we've gotten to this point.
Yeah,
I think that the bottom line is I don't get the sense in that interview that he's taken a lot of ownership for how the Seattle series marks the very first instance of needing to get help through the player assistance program. You know, there's a reason he's in stage 3 of the program, and that was stage 1.
Yep.
And that was a direct result of what happened in Seattle. And so it does seem like he glosses over that bit just a little bit. And I would have maybe liked to see him take a little more accountability in that situation, because as we know, it leads to a second stint in the player assistance program in January, wherein there's another violation.
Yep.
And that obviously brings us to what unfolds post this interview. So I think it would be more telling to hear from Val Nichushkin now after the fact at some point. I will say, too, the media did try to talk to Val Nichushkin a lot after he returned from the program after the stint in January, and we weren't able to speak with him. So there were opportunities presented to him to speak to the local media. Understandably, there is a language difference that might have affected his comfort level with speaking to us then, but there were avenues for him to speak on this if he really did feel like there was more he wanted to say on the subject. And beyond that, I still think it just hasn't really changed the challenges of the situation that the Avs are in and the uncertainty of what it means for his future.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, because I got my notes written right here, and I was gonna ask you if you wanted to talk about it a little bit. So I'm glad you're bringing it up. Here's my take on it. Um, Whenever it's an article that comes from overseas and there's translation, I'm not saying it's wrongly translated. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, but there's an expression, right? Lost in translation. So somewhere, somehow, there's tidbits there that um, are probably not accurate in a sense. And again, not saying, like, for example, Evan's a tremendous reporter. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking in general. Now, with that said, yeah, you got to take it into context. Like Megan just said, this was done right, after the first, let's call it the first offense, right? You know what I mean? So it was done after the Seattle series. Um, I think we're all in agreement here that once training camp came, uh, the opportunity was there, right, to kind of clear things up a little bit, of what had happened um, in Seattle. Uh, Not much was said in training camp if we go back. Remember, I think all of us, AJ, we're all like, nothing was said, really, nothing. And I get it, like some of it is, you know, doesn't have to be public knowledge, but I think it was more like, yeah, no, case closed, see you later. You know what I mean? And I think I've always said, as a player and working in management and being a player myself, like, you are your own representation. I don't care if you're the team speaks for you or your agent or whatever it is. There's always a time and a place. It's always the same when I talk about contract negotiations. I think Jonathan Druin put his foot down for sure last week or two, whatever it was. When it comes down to, I don't care what the agent, what the team says. Sometimes you got to take ownership yourself of what the situation entitles. It was the same thing for Al. He had the opportunity to and I agree, the language barrier, whatever it is, but he had an opportunity to fix a little bit what was going around, and if he felt instead of doing it the way he did it, that there was like pressure from the team or whatever it was, and then it comes out in a different country, and then it comes out months later, here after it's happened 3 times. What it tells me, I'm a big Val Matushkin fan. You guys know that. I'm a huge fan. Now, with that said, I understand that there's, a disease, like the addiction aspect of all this, and I think the 5 of us have made it very clear we're all on the same page. You gotta, you feel bad for the addiction, and addiction makes you do things that sometimes are not good at times, but there's always um, repercussions or whatever you want to call that. There's always like something that happens because of it. Now, and I'll go again, when you're in a team sport, totally different than if you're a golfer or a tennis player, totally different. You are part of a team, you are part of a salary cap. There's consequences to your actions. And that's why the Avs have been put in a pickle For example, this offseason is the easiest thing to look at. But then again, that article was done, you know, after the first time in Seattle. Since then, there's been two more occasions. So now you're at three occasions, and that's why it's a different outcome than the first time around. And I think it will be a different outcome. I'm not going to speak for the Avs here, but and I agree with the Avs saying, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to comment on something like that." I would do the same thing because somewhere, somehow, uh, that's people are going to say it's not him, it's the addiction. Fair. Pile them together, you know. And again, I'm not being soft on it. I'm not being harsh on it. It's a fact. Those are part of the consequences, and I think that if that's what came out after the first, time that it happened, which was Seattle, and it's happened two more times. Well, I can see why it happened two more times because he was very laid back in his comments there about what really had transpired or what had happened.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real about it.
Yeah,
All of the words ring pretty hollow when you don't hear him take a lot of accountability. You hear him come
that's
up with
it.
a lot of excuses. And then at the end of the day, he goes back into the program for a third time. So all of those excuses are what? Okay, you did it again. Are you just going to give us a bunch of excuses again? And I get it. The addiction side of this sucks, and maybe
Yeah.
he isn't capable of controlling himself on that front. But if he's not willing to at least admit that there's a problem here, I don't see how it gets better.
He just
And sorry, Megan, I just want to add one more thing, and I'm cutting you off like that because I think it's very important. And like I said to you guys, I really thought about this today when I was reading Twitter and everything, and I really want to come to the defense of, like, this has nothing to do with the abs, but somewhere somehow this is about the abs right now when it comes down to medical staff and the pressure of guys playing and take. I can speak to it in a sense because I was a player. I worked in management, and too many times you see things that you read in the papers or on Twitter or comments that are said that, like guys are getting injections and it's like in the movies, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really how it works. You're talking about really highly qualified medical people, whether it's doctors and, or Matt Sokolowski, like and Scotty Too Hottie and everyone. I mean, Scotty Woodward. I'll come to the defense of these guys any day, because at the end of the day, the player, if he doesn't feel that he's capable of playing, and remember it came down to concussion. I come from a different era too, right? It's not that we just weren't aware of concussions. We didn't know what it was. You know what I mean? And I understand the play through injuries, and guys will always play through injuries, and some guys don't. It's your pain tolerance, and nobody judges you. Nobody makes fun of you for not playing, and nobody pressures you into playing. And I'll give guys, and I've told you guys that before. I'll come to the defense of this franchise when it comes down to from the get go, from 20, 25 years ago, 15 years ago to now. Peter Forsberg, give you an example, wanting to go freaking play in the Stanley Cup Finals. And yeah, it's the Cup Finals. He's the best player in the world. I can tell you firsthand. And Peter, we can call him right now. He'll tell you. My old man was like, "Yeah, no, you're not playing. It's not important. Your health is more important than playing hockey. And being with your kids when you're older is more important than playing hockey. Yeah, in the moment, it's important. It's what we do. But I'll come to the defense of those guys. Nobody forced them to play. Nobody forced them to take injections. That's not how it works. And when you take an injection, that's a big word, and it's nothing illegal, and it's all done through medical like staff and everything. And so a lot of people do this in the common world when they're getting AJ got a freaking cortisone shot, like, you know what I mean, like to make his knee feel better. Like that was like what, 6 months ago, whatever it was. So I think we got to take that with a grain of salt a little bit. It's not like in the movies where you're going in a closet and it's illegal, and there's nothing that was done illegal. Uh, Especially nowadays. And I'm talking about in the NHL. And at the end of the day, if you didn't want to play, you didn't have to play. So I'll come to the defense of the medical staff. And I thought it was important for me to say that because you're not just pressured to play. At the end of the day, you're your own self, you're your own thing. And if he had a shoulder injury, I'm sure he did. All good. Then he wasn't going to play great. I mean, everybody goes through stuff, and you know, then leave it at that. But it's not because you were forced to play and you were forced to take injections. I'll stand by that.
I appreciate him opening up about the nature of injuries. This is the kind of thing that you never really know what players are battling through in playoffs and that time of year. It's usually hard to keep them off the ice. So I don't doubt that there was some personal pressure from Val to want to keep playing. And so the nature of the injuries compounding like that and learning about it does elicit some sympathy. But in terms of having conversations about Val's future with the Colorado Avalanche, I don't think I can seriously entertain those until he starts to take ownership of the aspect that put him in the program in the first place. You know, in describing it as poor decisions made with friends and that sort of being the only mention of the problem that puts him in stage 1 of the program following the Seattle series, it's a stark contrast to the way that Sammy G was very open about his struggles. I feel like that allowed Gerard to make peace with his demons and really effectively receive treatment through the program. I think that there's a lot of layers to this that I will never fully understand, but I think that is the first step to Val Nichushkin really getting to a place to play hockey again. And until I see it, I can't seriously have those conversations around reinstating him and seeing him play for the Avs again. And I think that's the challenging part about this interview that is understandably already a little bit dated because it happened in the regular season that I struggle to come to terms with still.
Agreed. All right. We do have to move on a little bit here. We'll talk about the Avs being winners or losers and some of the others in free agency in just a second. But before that, if you're looking to take care of your own mental health, UC Health is here and encourages Coloradans even to live their healthiest lives through statewide initiatives that include taking care of your mental health. And of course, they do a great job taking care of your physical health too. So make sure UC Health is on your radar. Former UC Health president David Schlicht himself, one of many people that make sure he's getting himself taken care of. He's an active outdoorsy, typical Colorado person. David's path as an Olympic hopeful took a turn when he lost his leg after a ski training accident. So the doctors at UC Health helped him decide to amputate the leg and, make sure he's still being active and still taking care of himself, even with the injury that he went through. So he relies on the outdoors himself to help him through his struggles. And of course, he's always taking care of the mental side, thanks to UC Health. If you want to learn more about David's story and see more inspiring patient stories from UC Health, you can head to uchealth.org/tomorrow to learn what it means to live like there is a tomorrow. Again, that's uchealth.org/tomorrow. Go check it out if you haven't yet. And when you're taking care of your mental health, make sure you're also making your ride to and from work or anywhere else easy with Toyota. You can go get yourself a ton of different Toyota vehicles at your Front Range Toyota stores. 17 off-roading vehicles if you are one of those off-roading, I say all-wheeler, four-wheel drive vehicles. If you are one of those outdoorsy Colorado people, the Toyotas can get you to where you want to go. If you're hauling stuff back and forth, they got trucks like the Tacoma and the Tundra. They even have 16 hybrid vehicle choices for you to choose from, more than anybody else out there when it comes to the zero-emission vehicles. So go check out your Front Range Toyota dealerships today. They're the official vehicle of the Colorado Avalanche and the official vehicle of the DNVR crew here as well. You can find them at AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. We are going to move on here to free agency stuff. I do want to start with the Avs, though. The Avs free agency, obviously, they lost a number of players. They picked some back up. There is a little bit of that cap management we were talking about. Winners or losers, or somewhere in the middle for Colorado Avalanche. I'll give you a push as well. What do we think?
I think we have to have the conversation about, in evaluating winners and losers, what teams stood to improve more than others. Like, sure, with where the Avs finished the season and where they're at, in Nathan MacKinnon's own words, they felt so close, frustratingly close. So I don't think that there was much to be done in this free agency offseason compared to other teams that I would more readily call a winner. Mm-hmm. But it's because they had a lot of room for improvement and some pretty serious holes to fill. Now, that's still true of the Avs to some extent, and it's why I would lean towards classifying them as winners, particularly because of how they have navigated the challenging and unique cap constraints that exist with the uncertainty around Landeskog and Nichushkin. That is such a challenge to operate around that the Jonathan Drouin contract by itself stands out as one of the best contracts so far of the offseason because of the value. And looking at what this player just accomplished last year, it just becomes almost unbelievable. And looking at how they've rounded out the bottom of the D-core too, they've gotten some value contracts put in there, but also players with valuable NHL experience and a little bit younger than the players we've seen them target for that third pairing. I view that as a win. I do think that is moving towards a slightly different direction without abandoning some of the things that they do appreciate for that bottom pair. That better sets them up for next year. And they've given themselves a lot of options there too, so they're not really anchored to just one option there. They have a couple different looks in the types of defensemen that they targeted with Brandstrom and DeHaan. So all that to say, I really like what they've done so far. The Cal Ritchie ELC comes in today. I'm not going to get carried away and suggest that's another value contract that's going to make an NHL
it's
impact
a 4C
next
option,
year.
though.
But it's a 4C option. And so they've really set themselves up with a lot of affordable options to keep themselves cap compliant with the challenging uncertainty that has existed.
Yep.
Are we? Yeah, I got a question for you. Are we doing like winners, like top 3 winners, or are you just specifically just asking Avs right now?
Avs for
Like,
now. We'll get into those in a
okay.
minute.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Well, I'm giving it away a little bit right now. Like, Avs are in my top 3 winners. So, and I mean that, and this is not biased. This is not. Um, yeah, it's an Avs. We cover the Avs, and this is what we talk about. And I'm not kissing ass right now. We just talked about it the first part of the show. There, Natushkin and Gabe and God bless Gabe. I love him, as you guys know, but they were in a tough spot. They were in hell, and they've been in hell. It's tough to maneuver with those situations. Again, nothing against the people, nothing against the diseases, whatever it is, like the addiction, like or Gabe's injury. Gabe's can figure it out. He can figure it out, meaning like he's earned the right as the captain of the franchise, the man, the myth, the legend. I love him. He's earned the right, and CMAC knows that, and he said that many times, right? So my take on it is, I think it's outstanding what they did just by the signing of Drew. And again, I'm giving you a hint right now on my top signing. Like Druin's got to be up there. It has to be, and it comes from the player, comes from the team. It comes from the agent. It comes from everybody involved. It was an awesome signing. It's the best signing of free agency. With that said, um, you know, the Avalanche, if you look at it, are they going to be a better team than they were at the other year? Subtraction. Well, you're going to go back. You're better every year. If everybody has a career year, then it's tough to duplicate. Okay, Mac had an unbelievable year. Awesome. McKinnon, he might do it again. Who says he can't get 150, right? Oh, let's say he has a bad year in a sense. He's got 125, 130. You know what I mean? That's the standards. Now, Kale didn't have his best year. Now you're talking about from the end of the year. Well, guess what? They were still an awesome team. They were still a top 5 team in the league. And then now you're going to see Middlestat for a full season. We were talking about all year complaining about Ryan Johansson at 2C. Now you're going to get Mac and then Middlestat and a little more stability there. I think they're better off on D, right? Meghan just talked about it. They're better
It's a
off
little
on D
low.
with DeHaan. What's that?
You're good. Keep going.
No, I'm saying like they're better off on D. You know what I mean? And I like Jack Johnson. I think it was time. It was, he's been serviceable, but it was time to move on. And I think DeHaan's an upgrade. Then you're talking about Brandstrom. Then you're talking about a little bit of competition. I want to push Malinsky. I want him to earn a job. I do. You know what I mean? So somewhere, somehow, you're better off on D than you were last year. Caleb Jones found a job in LA, great, awesome. Jack found a job in Columbus, awesome. But I think you replace them with better pieces. Now in the net, you're going to get a little bit more stability than last year because now Eustace is coming in and he's going to be the backup, right? So it's not going to be like anymore like going to pick up a guy on waivers and whatever it is. And then you would think that Georgie, like a little more maturity, he's going to have a better year, and maybe he doesn't. Maybe he has the same year. And I think their goaltending is, it's fine. It's okay. It's solid. Now, would they like to get a third guy? Yeah, I would. For all the reasons, because you deal with injuries and stuff like that. So maybe right there they haven't filled that up yet. But on D they're better, and then up front, yeah, you lost the Trennans, the Duhaimes, and things like that. But you got to remember all year long, you're going to get Logan O'Connor back. You're going to get like I said, a full year of Middlestat, and who knows what what you're going to be. So somewhere, somehow, Parker Kelly's a good addition, So I think the Avs did not get weaker. I think they got better. And I think that they'll be even more hungry than they were last year because I thought it was a successful season. And again, there was some incidents and things like that. We talked about at the start of the show that kind of derailed them a little bit as a team in the playoffs, and they could have gone further. Do I think that they're better than the Edmonton Oilers? Yes. Today, yes. This season, yes. So they could have been in the finals against Florida. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I get that, but I do believe that they were winners, and especially in the hell that they've been, the cap hell they've been put in. I thought it was a fantastic offseason for those guys so far. If they can just add again. A 4C, is that going to be through free agency? Is it going to be through waivers? It could be through waivers at the start of the season. You're going to find a guy that's cheap that oh my God, I didn't think about that guy. He's a perfect fit, to be a 4C. Or is it going to be Cal Ritchie, like, you guys were talking about at the start of the show, which is, those are all viable options that they're nice options. They're fun options to look at. And then find a third goalie on waivers or whatever it is. And then you're a better team than you were last year, which was a fantastic hockey team.
For the Avs, but there are a couple of things I wanted to mention there. First being the analytics back up the Avs being maybe one of the most efficient teams in acquiring defensive play on the ice this offseason. It's advanced analytics. You take stats like WAR with a grain of salt, but I'm sure if you're on Twitter, you've seen the graphics of the Avs gaining the most WAR of anyone this offseason on the defensive side of the puck. And a lot of that for me comes in this Brandstrom move. When you look at him analytically compared directly to Sean Walker, who the Avs lost, their analytics are almost identical in their prevention and their offensive production both. And that comes in a situation where Brandstrom was in Ottawa, who should have a better situation to play in here in Colorado. So you can maybe even expect those conditions to improve a little bit and him get even a little bit better. Now, this is, of course, if things go well. But the Avs have set themselves up they felt like they needed more defensive acumen this offseason, and they did so at a very efficient price. Now, the other side of this is, I would ask people to be patient. I've seen a lot of people comparing what the Avs are this offseason to what the Avs were on May 1st. Keep in mind that the Avs team on May 1st had a trade deadline to go through. What you should be comparing the current Avs to is what the Avs were on last October 1st. That's a team with Ryan Johansson on it. That's a team that was giving Caleb Jones regular playing time on their defense. And compared to last October 1st, outside of the Nichushkin situation, which is out of the Avalanche control, I think you can make a legitimate case for the Avs being a better team. That's a winner to me.
Absolutely. And, it's because there's a little less gamble on some of the bigger pieces. For example, the Casey Middlestat extension, and having gotten to see a little bit of how he fits in Colorado makes that feel like a safer bet than Tomas Tatar, a player that they probably would have liked to be in the top 6, doesn't come out at the start of the season, really justifying that type of role. Same for Jonathan Drouin. Like, Jonathan Drouin now is not the same Drouin that started the season with the Avs.
Very true.
Obviously, the Ryan Johansson experiment didn't work out, and so their top 6, even without a Landeskog and a Nichushkin, which is obviously not ideal, still feels a little more clear than it was the start of last season, just because that kind of middle 6 component was very mysterious. And there was that adjustment period even for Ross Colton and Miles Wood, and now they have a year under their belt too. Yep. I know that some of this is just borrowing upon things that worked well last year, so it's not even necessarily a big change, but getting Casey Middlestat and Jonathan Drouin back on board is such a huge piece to why the Avs are probably better going into the start of this year than they were at the start of last year.
100%.
We're all on the same page. I love it.
Yep. It's a great spot. We'll get into some of the rest of the league in just a second here on winners and losers, at least winners from our side. Eric sent a list of like 16 teams, winners and losers. So he went hard on this one. But before we get into the winners and the losers, we are brought to you by us. We have a couple of DNVR events coming up. If you haven't gotten on board with the Broncos travel takeover, you can still get your tickets. Go in and get on it right now. Make sure you're jumping in with the DNVR crew. Get in on all the action. Of course, we are currently in the stages of planning our takeovers for next season as well with the Avs schedule out. So keep your eyes out for some of those takeovers and get ready to get the tickets. Come watch Avs games in Ball Arena with us. So it should be a fun time. Of course, we do events down here at the bar as well. If you're a Euros fan, I believe we will be watching 1 p.m. here at the bar, the Euro Cup 2024 semifinals tomorrow. So you can come watch the Euro and look through the window and watch us doing our pod live at the same time as the Euros are going on. It should be a fun time down here at DNVR. Of course, you can always go over to thednvr.com and go to our events section to see all of the events you can get in with us. So make sure you're jumping on that. And then if you're going to an event, you might as well put a couple of bucks on it, right? Have a little bit of fun with Bet365. Go put some money down. When you sign up with code DNVR365, you put $10 in your account. You get $150 in bonus bets, or if you'd rather, you can get a first bet safety bonus up to $1,000. Whichever one you prefer, either the free $150 or you get up to $1,000 your bet back if you lose on your first bet with the safety net. Jump on it with Bet365, making sure you're getting in on all of the odds boosts. 10,000 boosts a month or more. So they really give you a ton on that front. And they even have a DNVR bet that you can get on with Bet365. So again, make sure you're using that DNVR365 code when you sign up with a new account to Bet365 and get in on all the action. Of course, you must be 21 or older, physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER today. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcasts. I want to start with our winners here, and I will go first just because I'm already talking. My winner for this offseason was the New Jersey Devils. I know they made a number of different moves. They made a couple of different things, but they really did a good job, I think, rounding out their roster. They get Brendan Dillon and Brett Pesce on the back end to really solidify that defense with them moving out a couple of guys. And they also add some decent depth in a Stefan Noesen for a pretty reasonable price across 3 years. A little more expensive than Miles Wood, but also not a 6-year deal. And then I really like this move for them. I know some people are going to disagree, but they bring back Tomas Tatar after a tough year for Tatar. New Jersey is a place where he's already proven that it can work for him. A couple years ago, he put up solid production in New Jersey, was able to produce, 48 points in 22-23 in New Jersey, including 20 goals. So they know it can work for him there, and he can be another depth production option for them. And look, is it a perfect world? No. Have they completely solved their goalie spot? No, but they did go out and make other moves to help themselves in that situation, even if it wasn't necessarily in free agency. And you look at a team that at least talent-wise should be absolutely dripping with it. A team that you felt probably underperformed a little bit last year after making the playoffs the year before. Not only the free agency again, but they go out and get Paul Cotter in a trade. They also add Kovacevic, as well as, a couple of picks and stuff at the draft. So a team for me that navigated this free agency quite well with a lot of talent and should look to push back into at absolute minimum a playoff team. Any other thoughts on New Jersey, or should we move on?
I love it. I had him as my honorable mention. There's only 3 teams, and obviously the Avs being one of them leaves me 2. But I agree with you. I loved it the other day when they got. I'm a big Paul Cotter fan. I do. I love it. I think again you're talking about a 4th-line player. I love the Markstrom, and they're going to be a lot better. I think it was unacceptable last year. I think they know it. I think Jack Hughes is special. I think you're going to see him take a jump next year, and if he can stay healthy, obviously, and have that type of season where everybody's like, okay, he's arrived now. He's at the top. Towards the top of the league. Yeah, no, I love your pick. I do. There's not much to add, but I do believe I had them right down the cusp. And again, it's all subject to taste and everything, but they're definitely there are definitely winners for sure.
Defensive additions of Pesce and Dillon, and I think that turning Akira Schmidt into Paul Cotter was an upgrade, just because that was goaltending is still, an interesting position for New Jersey, but I think that improved prior to that move so that they could move on from Schmidt and turn that into a valuable player for a different part of the lineup.
For sure. Will say cap is a little bit tight for them. They currently have just under $5 million cap space, but they do still need to sign Dawson Mercer. So there's an element of cap hell that they're probably putting themselves in this offseason because Luke Hughes will have to be signed the following year, and they have a handful of RFAs there. But in the immediate, I really like what they did for the most part. Meghan, who do you have as a winner?
I have a lot of honorable mentions, but I had to evaluate what Nashville is going to be next year.
In the immediate, no argument. Yeah.
In the immediate, I classify them as winners. This was a team that I think identity-wise needed to make a decision about what they are. There were parts of the lineup that pointed to rebuild just because of the players that they've moved on from that were once perceived as core players headlining the top of that lineup. They've obviously retained parts of the important core too, though, and Roman Josi still being there and Philip Forsberg still being there. But they made huge additions to the forward group. One, Steven Stamkos, I think, adds so much off-ice value in terms of what he brings as a leader that it's going to provide a lot of necessary direction for what Nashville needs to be doing. I think that the UC Saros extension also kind of showed a commitment to what this team and the direction is intending to go, which was important too, because I think that was a little bit unclear this last season. And then, of course, Marchessault being added to that group as well, and Brady Shea. I think that the term for each of these contracts scares me. I have to be honest. That's why they're the winners of this offseason, but I don't know how this
they're
ages
winners
for all of them.
2 years, and then in year 3, it could be a crater.
I don't know what Brady Shea looks like shouldering matchups outside of Carolina's system. And Marchessault on a 5-year deal just feels like that's going to start to age.
It's going to end poorly.
Kind of quickly past this season. And I don't want to wish that on them necessarily. But in the immediate, this adds some important players for their forward group to play alongside. And I think under the coaching of Brunette, who had really positive results in how he was to turn around the team last year, it just gives him strong players to work with after an impressive coaching turnaround in this last year. So Nashville, I have to give them a little bit of a shout out, but I'm willing to discuss some other winners too that I felt deserved some recognition.
For sure. You like Nashville?
Yeah, they were one of my top 3 winners. Absolutely.
There you go.
I thought they were pretty vanilla, right? The last year or so, you know what I mean? I thought they were really vanilla, actually. I like what they did. I like what they just, like they decided it wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? It wasn't good enough. And then clearly, I mean, again, we're not going to talk about Steven Stamkos and the Tampa Bay Lightning. And, there's always two sides to every story. You know what I mean? It's like when you're in a marriage, and I've been married 25 years. I can tell you sometimes it's like, it's not that you're right or you're wrong, or she, or my wife, Jill, is right or wrong. It's just your interpretation of stuff, right? You know what I mean? And I think that's what's kind of happening with Stamkos and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think they're just saying, like, get out the door, and this is so horrible the way they've treated them. Like I always tell you guys, there's two sides to every story, but I think it's to the benefit of the Nashville Predators, because he had a tremendous year last year. Steven Stamkos is still playing well. Again, in 4 years, I don't know. So I agree with both of you. Marchie, I'm a big fan. 5 years from now, I'm not sure, right? You know what I mean? 4 years from now, I'm not sure. But today, tomorrow, and this coming season, I like what they did. I Barry Trotz, and, they just kind of felt that it was not good enough, but I think they almost overachieved this past year. Nobody really picked them to make the playoffs. And Bruno does a great job there. The coaching staff is a great coach that you want to play for, and very smart. He was a smart player. He's a smart coach. And I think what they did there is, I agree. I mean, Brady Shea, I like him, but I almost picked him for my worst contract of free agency because I don't like the term at 7 years. But I mean, he was a good player in New York. He was a good player in Carolina. I mean, I just think it's a little steep for 7 years. But I like what Nashville did. They're saying, hey, we're here. for the Avalanche, it's the same division. That means that team got better, and not that they weren't a playoff team last year, but I do believe I just like the pizzazz they did. Marchessault, Stamkos, they did, obviously something that the Avalanche could not do. You know what I mean? So I think it's all relative, like you guys said, about where you are at in your cap world and all that kind of stuff. But for what they are, what they did, and where they're going to, I thought they were winners.
There's a couple of sides to this for me. First, super respectful of their veterans. They said, look, we have Philip Forsberg on a 1 million-year deal. We want to go for it for him. Their captain, Roman Josi, has 4 years left. He's 34. We want to go for it for him. We signed Ryan O'Reilly in free agency last year. We want to respect that and go for it for him. So they bought into the guys that they have and said, we're going to make a real push with this team. My problem is, are they good enough to win a Stanley Cup with this roster? I don't know that I can say yes to that. Are they a winner in free agency? Did they get a lot better? Yes. Are they good enough to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 or 3 years? I can't definitively say yes. I know you can never say yes, but I don't feel like they're there yet. And if they don't get there, it's going to get bad. It's going to get bad. They have accepted that as part of this plan, that 4 or 5 years from now, it's going to be rough. So if they don't get there, it's tough. Yeah.
It's well said by you. I agree. It's well said by you. I agree. You know what I mean? Like, do they have enough to win the cup? You know what I mean? Like, where if you're doing this, it's because you believe you are, right? You know what I mean? But I can see why you would think, or I, or anyone, Meghan, or anyone, like, can they really win the cup with that? Again, that's why we play the games, and that's why the games are played on the ice, and we shall see. But it's a very fair point by you, though, Rudo. That's really, really fair.
Eric, who was your third winner?
Mine was Edmonton. And again, for all the reasons, because obviously going to the finals, they were able to keep their guys. Again, Corey Perry and the Browns, and adding and Yarnmark, which I thought was a very fair price. It's a guy that for your fourth line's perfect. And I like that they added Arvidsson. I've told you guys before. Would I sign him? No, for all the reasons that I've said, because I don't think he's durable. But if you put that aside, I love him as a player, and I think he'll be a perfect fit in Edmonton. Keeping Evan and Enrique was awesome. I do believe he could have gone more somewhere else. I don't know. He must have really liked his experience, but from what I'm told, that's took a lower number to stay there. He was offered more money at a couple different places. And again, Jeff Skinner. You guys know what I think of him. I'm not fond of him, but I think in an Edmonton Oilers lineup, uh, you know, not being the guy, because I've always said my thing with him is when he's the guy, he won't bring you to the promised land, which is the playoffs, right? That's a start. You got to get in the playoffs before winning the cup. Obviously, he's never done it. And it is a team sport. I agree. It's not a single individual sport. So, but Skinner, it is a great signing for them. It's low key at $1 million, and I think obviously forget it. I know it's not free agency, but they made that trade there for McLeod, and getting that. I don't know if you guys like him, Savoy, but certainly he's nice, prospect, right? So who knows what's going to happen? So some people have called what's his name there. Jeff Jackson, that's kind of interim GM now / president, with Kenny not being there. They say, they did a great job at the draft, and some even called him the new Sam Pollock. You guys are too young, but that's way older than I was, they call him the Sam Pollock of the NHL, which was my dad's idol actually growing up, because he was the Montreal Canadiens GM. And, some people said he made some moves like Sam Pollock the last couple of weeks. So I tend to agree. That's why they're in my winners.
I liked Edmonton. They were one of my honorable mentions just because the Skinner contract is such a value contract. This is still a 6-time 30-goal scorer on a Buffalo team that has struggled. Like, this is a team that hasn't seen the playoffs, so he hasn't seen playoff time.
It's true.
Which is why that needs to be a value contract. There's still risk with this player, and similar with Arvidsson, there's risk just because of injury, coming off injury. But what he can add offensively is going to be such a boost. Just the two-way impact that he can have 5-on-5, and what he can do even without power play and power play time, because he won't get it there, is still shine. So I think the injury thing also comes a little bit of risk. And then I think, to Eric's point, Adam Henrique's contract coming in maybe a little bit below what the projected value could have been there. It's another player who I think has an off-ice impact that's really valuable and necessary for Edmonton to keep steering that ship in the right direction. Josh Brown and Troy Stetcher just boost the defensive depth, so I think that's good business as well. I think the value of the Jeff Skinner contract is why I was inclined to feel good about what Edmonton did with some of these offseason moves.
And to add to that, it's a little bit like you get bought out, right? So people understand. I mean, I know you guys do, but it's 2/3 of your contract, and then you'll sign kind of a lower number. It's a lot like Matt Duchene last year, right? Gets bought out by Nashville and then signs that 1 million, 1 year deal of 3 million, I believe last year or something like that. So very similar to that, and you're getting your money. So he's getting his money in total, or maybe short a little bit and change, or over and a little change. But I agree, that's a value contract, even though he's not my favorite, like I've told you guys, but it's a great value contract.
Edmonton's moves in a vacuum, great, awesome, had a great offseason. They're over the cap. They are currently over the cap hit. They still have to sign Dylan Holloway. They still have to sign Philip Broberg. They're not done yet. I can't give them they won the offseason when they have to actively move something out to have their roster be eligible to play next season. And tomorrow they're going to dump Evander Kane on someone for a 5th-round pick and everything will be great. But until that gets done, they can't play right now. Their offseason is good in theory, but what do they have to do to get cap compliant?
I don't like Evander Kane, but that is also going to be a loss that needs to be replenished because he did have value to that forward group, and anytime that he's out of the lineup, it is immediately felt. And so I think Evander Kane's kind of where I'm looking to see them move on from that player to get cap compliant. Yeah. And just to be clear, that's where, sure, there's this addition of Skinner that feels really great. He's got kind of big shoes to fill, and he's a different type of player.
Very different, yeah.
I think we'll evaluate that a little bit differently too, when we see how they get cap compliant and what type of player they have to move on from, because it's going to leave some kind of hole that needs to be filled.
Yep.
And the reason why I had him in there, I'll be brutally honest with you, is I just wanted to piss you off because I knew you were mad that they're not cap compliant.
Hey, look, at least they're not the Washington Capitals, all right? That team's got like $100 million cap hit right now. It's crazy.
Oof.
Okay. We do have a couple of specifics I want to get into. Teams that made the bet, well, not the teams, but the players that got the best deals out there. I know, Megan, you put one in, I put one in. You want me to go first or you?
You go first.
All right. I took the XF. I took the Sean Walker deal. 5 years at $3.5 million for that guy is just a solid deal. And I understand why the Avs couldn't do it. But to sign up that guy for a 5-year deal at that price, especially when you go look at some of the other defensive deals that were getting signed. Eric mentioned the Brady Shea deal at 7 years there. For Carolina to recoup some of the defensemen that they've lost at that price with Sean Walker, it's just great business from Carolina to go out and get a guy like that. This dude was 1 point shy of a 30-point season last year. You already know what he brings on the defensive end, which is high-quality stuff. You locked him up for 5 years for a guy that is only 30, not even 30. He's 29. He doesn't turn 30 until November. That only takes you to 35, 34 and change, whatever you want to call it. That's not some of these deals that are pushing defensemen into 37, 38, 39 that we've seen this offseason that have some worry about ending poorly. And even if it does end poorly at that price, it's just not that big of a deal. So I think this was an absolutely great signing by a Carolina team that had a very busy offseason. I'll put it that way.
It feels really good for Carolina specifically too, because of the value that they're getting in this player for that affordability, and they also add Gostisbehere to their D group. So I just think it gets stronger with that addition, and then will carry to the forward group. This is not like totally winner deserving of crown, but a team that I think has made pretty solid moves this offseason.
Agree. Fully agree. That was my pick. Megan, what is your pick?
I did Anthony Beauvillier
Sure.
with Pittsburgh, and it's just because this is still a player with a pretty high-end shooting percentage, despite the recent struggles that he's faced in his career. This is somebody that can round out and add a scoring punch to Pittsburgh's forward group, and I think that he has a lot more to offer than we've seen out of recent times. I think he can offer top six and power play opportunities, and it's kind of, similar to the Jeff Skinner. It's like he's taken a significant pay cut on a prove-it deal that he'll hope will parlay into something bigger and better next year.
Just for the record, it's a 1 year, 1.25 deal for Beauvillier.
Oh my God, I almost passed out there. I was like, what?
And I
We
just
were
love the
talking about
value
it. Remember
of- what
the
was that,
invite? I was
5
like,
years?
oh my God, did I miss something?
No, just a 1 year deal, but very much the type of style of deal you see that the Avs make a lot
Yeah.
with the, hey, here's a chance to go prove yourself, and we can get a lot of good value if you be that 35 to 40 point guy that I at
Yes.
least believe Beauvillier
Oh,
can be.
that's better. That's better. I'll jump in right now. Like I really like that contract, Bavili. I think Avs fans. I'm very familiar with Sean Walker. I don't think we got to see the real Sean Walker for whatever reason. You know what I mean? I think it's it's trade deadline. It's quick. Then it's playoffs, and then he's gone. But I do love that contract. My pick. I mean, I did send it into Tiff, and I'm going to be very biased here, and I mean it. It's Jonathan Drouin. I don't think there's a better deal out there in free agency than the Joe Drouin deal. Like, I really thought it wasn't going to work out. I really thought. I mean, remember 10 minutes before, I really thought it was going to be in the high fours, and then, and then I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So I do believe for me, and it's not because this is an Avs podcast, but I do believe like I loved all those deals and like the Beauvillier and Walker, but I go back to it's being stupid, but I go back to Drouin. I think that was the best value of free agency.
Even close. I
agree.
Like, I didn't want to pick it because it honestly feels like cheating with the size of the hometown.
I know
discount we
that.
took.
I agree with you. That's why I'm saying the same. We're saying the same thing. But I cheated and I said I'm taking them. So
And
and it is in
someone
the
needed to.
notes. I did send it to Tiff. Tiff can vouch for me. I sent it in. I'm being
someone
biased.
needed to say the Drouin contract.
Agreed.
Because before
I must have
came
missed
in,
it. My baddie. Sorry about that.
the Duchesne
No, we're
contract
good.
was good.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
Jonathan
not
Drouin
mad
blew
at
it out of
Tiff.
the water.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's not like there weren't other good contracts out there, but yeah.
So that was mine.
There's a good one. We don't
Freaking love it.
really have time to get into our losers, so I guess we'll save that for another day. Megan, you had a couple of other honorable mention teams.
No, I think we've kind of. Oh, I kind of wanted to shout out Florida. Florida, obviously, on the heels of a cup win. sorry. Like, didn't necessarily need to do much, but I was
kept the band together. Mostly,
they kept the band together, but they also moved on from players that it's not to say they needed to move on from, but for what type of contract they ended up fetching, it was smart to do as much. I think that Brandon Montour and Oliver Ekman-Larsson,
that Montour contract,
seeing what they fetched in the free market, it's like, all right, Florida, I know you still enjoyed the value of these players, but you did need to move on from them because that wouldn't have been affordable. And then simultaneously, okay, Anton Lundell gets his extension. They get Sam Reinhart on a really cost-effective deal. It's really hard, as the Avs know, to keep the band together following a cup win. And I think that they're navigating it pretty smartly, all things considered. Because there are some big losses, Eric's favorite, Ryan Lomberg, another departure. That leaves a little bit of a hole to fill. But I do like how they're trying to navigate keeping this team strong and competitive into next year.
Yep. Good.
Yeah, the Lamborghini 2x2, you can't pay that in the situation they're in. You got to let them go. You say thank you, thanks for producing and being what you are, which was even a healthy scratch in the playoffs at times. But for what he was awesome. They just can't afford to pay him 2x2. But I agree with all the points Megan said. I think they did a great job considering everything.
Some pretty good low risk, high upside swings as well in Boquist and Nate Schmidt.
I like the Nate Schmidt.
Yeah.
Then he'll be returning to a familiar environment under Paul Maurice.
So some good opportunity for them to find some cheaper, effective teams. This is the team that gets to try to defend their Stanley Cup this next coming season. There were plenty of teams that did struggle as well, but like I said, maybe we'll get into that on Wednesday.
You can say Seattle.
Seattle's definitely one of them. They signed some contracts.
They're on mine. They're on mine.
We'll get to those picks on another day because we are pretty full on time. But as we wind it down here, I wanted to ask you guys a question, a little bit of a nod to next week. You had to pick one Avalanche game to show someone their first Avalanche game ever. You have to pick one. What would you pick?
If an alien came down from a spaceship and wanted to know about the Avs, which game would you show them?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go first. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, man. Go.
No, I want to hear yours first, Eric.
That's fine. I'm older, so you guys know me. I'll go backwards a little bit, For me, you got to go Game 7, 0-1, just because, I was in the building, not on the bench, but in the building. Not to be confused, as I was not a winner, just was there with my wife, and it was unbelievable atmosphere, and it was, it was at home. It was Pepsi Center at the time. It was electric, a lot of nerves, and it's Game 7, and it's Ray Bork, and I mean, I don't think it was a dry eye in that building, when it was all said and done. So for me, I'm a little bit, like I said, I'm going to go to the older fellas. Then I'm going to go with the 0-1 Game 7 victory for the second Stanley Cup.
Okay. Not that I don't absolutely love that game. In my opinion, one of the greatest moments in sports history. But I would not show that to a person watching their first game, because to truly appreciate that situation with Ray Bork, you have to understand more than just the hockey game that's in front of you.
True.
Someone watches Ray Bork lift the cup that doesn't know anything about hockey. Cool. That guy won a cup. Neat. They don't understand the 20-year quest that guy had been on to get one. They don't understand that he came to the Avs because they were one of the few teams that had the opportunity to get him there. Again, unbelievable game. If you're a hockey fan, pretty easy number one for me. But for someone who's never watched hockey, I don't know if that would be my pick.
I'm cheating a little because I am basing it off of they might not appreciate the significance of playoff games, generally speaking, a Game 7 or a series clincher type game.
I'm in on this take.
So I'm going to the Mac trick. One, because it's current Avs era, so if they're just getting into hockey, they can continue watching from this point and get in on the McKinnon lore. And it's just because when the hats had run out because they'd already been thrown onto the ice and that fourth goal is scored, it made people lose their minds in Ball Arena. And I think that the nod to the home point streak that McKinnon was chasing, it was just an electric environment. I've been to a lot of exciting hockey games, so I won't say I've never experienced anything like it, but it was pretty special, and I could see a new fan unfamiliar to the sport appreciating the crowd reaction to what was happening on the ice.
Yep. I think it's a good pick. I considered taking something like that. I considered taking the Peter Forsberg 6-point game, unreal comeback. But the one I ultimately settled on that I would show to a brand new fan would be Game 6 against St. Louis with the Darren Helm goal.
God, that was so special.
Yeah, and I show that because, yes, there was the clinching factor to the series and all of that. But one, it was a really good, hard-fought game, first of all. 2-2. Gives you a realistic expectation of what hockey games, at least playoff games, look like. Not these 7-goal, 7-5 nonsense blowout craziness. And two, you don't need to understand that it's a series clinching situation when Darren Helm scores with 3 seconds left on the clock or whatever it is. That's a hype moment, no matter what the context of the game is, because that goal sealed the game for the Avs. So that's the one I would go with. And then you can tell them about all the history at the same time of how it all added up.
And that's Papa on the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't normally do that, just for the record, to my new alien friend watching
that was
hockey.
His 4th goal of the season. Something in 90 games. So that's
but that goal is my favorite goal probably in Avs history. I got to be honest with you, because like Avs 1.0, a lot of success, then went through a lot of dark days for many years, and again Avs 2.0, where they were on the cusp of something. And I think that goal there, I was on my patio. I remember sitting, watching, and I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna win the cup. You know what I mean? And I think that goal told me like, okay, they're for real now. Like they're not like a mirage. Like they're not phony. They're for real. And that's why for me that goal is like one of my top goals ever scored by an Avalanche player.
Oh, you heard it from the man himself. We do have to wrap up today's show. We appreciate you hanging out. Pretty cool slate of shows we got coming up. We're interviewing another Stanley Cup winner tomorrow in Sylvain Lefebvre, which will make it actually, I think we'll have had every Avs captain except for Landy on the show with Lefebvre coming on. So he was only captain for like 3 days, but that's okay. We have that coming up. We'll talk about losers probably on Wednesday, and then we'll dive into some prospects and some mailbag stuff Thursday, Friday. So full slate of shows coming to you this week. We hope you'll hang around, like, subscribe here on YouTube. If you don't like YouTube, at least check out our podcast. We do have an audio-only version on wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.
Tiff, can you hear me? Tiff.